my friends. My name is Michael C., and welcome to 12 Step Spirituality. This week it's session 12, step 12. The whole conversation has been around sharing experience, strength, and hope, living in the pause. And the theme for step 12 is surrendering to love. My partner is in the back. Let me bring him out, and we will go to work. 1 second. Is that you, Adam?
It is indeed.
Good to see you, my friend.
Really good to see you, Michael.
Yeah, we were supposed to come back, and life got lifey for both of us. So
Right.
we're back for session 12, and I can hardly wait to get started. I happened to see a PowerPoint slide of a talk you were doing as of late on step 12, and I thought maybe we could use that as our on-ramp. So why don't you get us started?
I'll do just that. Yeah, it took us a month to get from step 11 to step 12. If only the steps actually went that fast. So yeah, it's good to be back. I gave a talk on step 12 about, I don't know, my brain's not so good at this anymore, but a couple of years ago. And this is from that. And when I gave that talk, at first, I was just talking all about the service component of step 12, service. And I will talk a little bit about that today. But then right before I gave this talk, a friend called me. He said, Adam, I need to do more meetings and work with more sponsees and do more service. And my insight was he actually needed more surrender. And so from that came the talk that I gave called Surrendering to Love. And it's how I now sum up, if you will, the 12 steps. So I'm going to go through those today a little bit, and we'll see what kind of trouble we can get into. So one of the things I first talked about was how in the big book we are called to relationship with a power greater than ourselves over and over again. In More About Alcoholism, he says, you may be suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience will conquer. And in We Agnostics, he says, the main object of this book is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself that will solve your problem. And at the end of There Is a Solution, he says, if what we have learned and felt and seen means anything at all, it means that all of us are the children of a living creator with whom we may form a relationship upon simple and understandable terms. So I use that as, this is what we're about. We are about entering into, surrendering to this relationship. But Richard Rohr posed a question about it. How is it going to work to opt into a relationship with divine love while simultaneously hating ourselves? Is it possible? Is it even possible to form a relationship on simple and understandable terms without doing something about our low self-regard, or what Henry Nouwen calls our endless capacity for self-loathing? So I did some thinking on that, and I was led by a nun, actually, Sister Maria Tasto, and I had gone to a retreat. And she maintained that one of the prerequisites of this relationship was a deep understanding and acceptance that we are loved by God. And I've come to believe that this is a prerequisite to the full relationship. We can start centering prayer without a sense of being held in love by our higher power. But eventually, to enter into full relationship, the relationship that each of us is being called to in the big book and being called to in our hearts, I need to accept and internalize this profound truth. I'm a beloved child of God, unconditionally loved. So then in my talk, I talked about, so how am I going to journey through these steps in a way where I allow myself to be loved and eventually to love myself? And, I talked about the process starting in 4 through 7, learning to feel compassionate for my former self. And then in 8 and 9, learning about forgiveness, starting to feel compassion for others. All throughout, boy, I wish I had started step 11, on day 1. I didn't, but it is where I practice receiving compassionate attention from the God of my understanding. And in step 12, I practice compassionate attention for others. And I had sponsors who threw me into that right away. Just because I was new didn't mean that I couldn't practice that in little ways, like stacking chairs, and in big ways, going with them on 12-step calls. Through all of this, I am learning to practice compassionate attention to myself. And I didn't come up with this term. I'm not sure where I saw it. I've seen a number of people refer to this, but they call the 12 steps in our program a school of love, where first I'm learning to love my former self and eventually love my present self. And I would end with this, that through the steps, through the meetings, through sponsorship, through all of it, I start to come around to myself, as long as I have this attitude of surrender. And it is very difficult to regard myself with compassion, with the eyes that I brought into the 12 steps when I first entered them. But eventually, I started to see others as God sees me. And the mechanism for that was all the steps as I just went through them, and in particular 12. As I am put in a position to see others with compassion, I start to view myself with that same compassion. And surrender is the only spiritual disposition where we can actually receive this love. If I'm not in surrender, then I can't receive it. It is the primary block when I'm running the show to receiving this. So in that way, our centering prayer is how we practice surrender, opening that channel to God's love and eventually to loving ourselves.
Wow. Well, for starters, I'm going to have you. Oh, there you go. Scooting over a little bit so that people can see your presence and feel your presence. And it's a big wow. Like what? Cutting to the chase. What I want to just say is, ditto. Because we can. That's a big piece of seeing that you just put on the table, my friend. And as you were taking me on that ride by sharing your experience with me on that, what came up is I think I saw somewhere the unsuspected inner resource. I think it was on the around the roar slide, and I remember that was the first idea that I was introduced to early on in recovery, and it touched me. The idea that I could have something in me, sacred, God, if you will, presence, and that was my on-ramp. And then the idea that through centering prayer, that not only is this presence in me, but this is a presence that by and large is who I am. I am not only one with this presence, which took me a while just to wrap my arms around that, and then the idea that, wait a minute, this is who I truly am. And as Keating so brilliantly put it forever ago. God and our true self are not separate. The God in me, it's not separate from me. While I am not God, God and my true self are one. And, I've been like you, I've been around for a little while, and I'm still catching up to the profundity of that immutable truth. And for the longest time, I kept saying, I can't wrap my mind around it. And people like you would say, don't try. You just give yourself a headache. Hope is a willingness to believe in that as a possibility, and then demonstrating that willingness through action. Well, like what? Well, serve others, love others, sponsor others, help others. And as you said, what I think you and I were chatting about this yesterday, the outflow of compassion magnifies or invokes the inflow. It's a cycle. And, here we are. The other thing I wanted to say is I remember hearing Sandy Beach, rest his soul, say that the goal of AA is found inside of the 12th step. That the purpose of AA is found in the preamble. Our primary purpose is to, stay sober, help others to do the same. But the goal is to have this spiritual awakening, this experience, this waking up, and to have that by the 12th step. That there's 12 steps we go to, but by the time we get there, something has happened not only to me, through me, for me, and that compels me to first of all, stay stopped with whatever brought me into recovery and continue to live my life from that. And now when people say, what's next? It's, well, we're going to see how far we'll be brought to this. But the caveat is surrender, as you put it so brilliantly. Surrendering, to me, the longer I'm in, is an action. I was interesting as you and I were centering for this conversation. One of the high tech words is pairing. Do you have your device paired to that? And surrender for me is pairing who I am, my thinking, to the God in me. I'm paired for the presence, or I'm paired for the pause, or I'm paired for my power. And as long as I stay paired, I'm going to be okay. The minute myself unpairs me, I need to repair, if you will, which is kind of a play on words.
Yeah.
But I just love how this centering prayer just we bring it into the 12 steps. And I've said it once, I'll continue to say it. It's not 1 + 1 is 2. It's 1 + 1 is, to the 10th.
Yeah. If we're lucky enough to stay around, that unsuspected inner resource, we start to suspect it a little bit, I think. We start to think, look at, either we see outside ourselves things happening to people, or we see ourselves starting to change. We start to suspect it. Right. And there's a lot in me that resists that change. But this whole 12 steps is designed to help me change from what I had become to something entirely different. Remember, the language is entire psychic change, profound alteration, complete defeat, vast change in feeling and outlook, revolutionary changes, right? And I rebel against change. I like to do the same thing over and over again. And so I need a lot of support along the way. And I certainly got it from friends and sponsors in the program. I got it from the literature, from reading the book, finding new meaning in it. But it was centering prayer that started to, for me, drop some of my inbred resistance to surrender, because I was actually practicing it. In real time, I'm letting go. I'm surrendering to this idea that God is with me, God is within me, God is around me, and my brain will kick up a fuss if I go too much, hanging out there. But in centering prayer, I have a way of letting go of all of that and actually using that skepticism as a way to draw closer to my higher power. I get to consent to each word, each skeptical word, it just doesn't matter what it is. And that draws me closer to the God of my understanding. That's the miracle of the practice, that it jujitsus my thoughts and redirects me towards my higher power.
I love it. In closing, I'll just say that surrender for me has become today in real time a practice, and I have to practice it in a very short moment of time, but many, many, many times throughout the day. And it basically is waking up to, once again, I'm not present for the presence. I'm, for years you tell me things like, watch out that you don't live in your head or spend too much time in your head. And for the longest time, I would think to myself, when you would say that or others, what are they talking about? And I now really get what that means for me is I'm not tethered to the moment. I'm not paired to right now. I'm thinking past or future or both at the same time. And I know how to do that very well. Lord knows I spent 60 plus years of my life, perfecting that skill.
Right.
But surrender basically says unpair to that and pair to the moment, because God's in the moment. And so long as I'm pairing and repairing, I'm going to be okay regardless of what happens around me. And that's the cornerstone I continue to build my faith in, and it's my story. I'm going to stick to it.
Michael, this has been a great ride going through these steps. Some of it is tapping into discoveries I've made along the way, but a lot of this has been rediscovering and finding new ways of approaching these steps because of centering prayer. And that's been a huge gift that this conversation that we've had has given to me. It's been a huge gift because, as I said before, I have a lot of built-in resistance, right? And so really diving into this, this ongoing dialogue has really been a beautiful way to renew my purpose through the steps.
Well, this would be a good time to, ask you, can we come back from time to time for encores to either, download people on updates of what we're experiencing on the steps, or who knows, there might be other conversations and about this. This profound body of knowledge, and or other people in the community that would like to engage with us. So promise me that you'll consider it, and we'll, take times out of our very full lives to see where it takes us.
Yeah, let's for sure. And maybe there will be 3 people in our next conversation.
We'll see. All right, my friends, it's good seeing you, and to all the people that are, watching now or will continue to watch us. It'll stay alive and well on the 12-Step Spirituality Facebook page, as well as all the other conversations prior to it. So this really completes a series of 12 conversations and living in the pause through the 12 steps. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. It's been great.